All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining this Peer Spotlight webinar hosted by InfoReady. I'm glad to welcome Jim Klenner from Ball State University today. Jim is the Biosafety Officer at Ball State, and he is going to be presenting with slides and some live action in InfoReady. So we're really looking forward to that. Before we get into the presentation, we should go over the logistics and the schedule. So the webinar is scheduled for 60 minutes. We'll have about 30 to 40 minutes presentation from Jim, and then we'll have around 20 minutes or so in Q&A. So I know you're going to have some questions. All your phones are muted. And so if you want to ask a question, please use the Q&A option built into Zoom. And we'll reserve those questions for the last 20 minutes during that Q&A session. Now, there's a poll question right now that just ended. Thanks for anyone who filled that out. We also have a survey for after the webinar. And that's optional, but we'd love to get your feedback. Now, a little bit about InfoReady. For those of you who don't know as much about us as we'd like you to know, InfoReady is an all-in-one platform, centralized. All your stakeholders are coming to one place and providing data and managing the process so that you don't have to have things stored and organized in a million places. So InfoReady allows you to collect forms and documents and route them through a review and approval workflow that you've created. All the reports are there. The notifications come out of the system. You can even collect follow-up forms years in advance to track outcomes and ROI and anything like that. The functionality in InfoReady, it can be used for a variety of different purposes. So on screen, you're seeing a sampling of different use cases. As you can see, we've got categories for units all across the university, all across campus, from research processes to things in the grad school, the provost office, at the college level, everything in between. So if you have any questions about how how you might use InfoReady for processes and programs we're not covering today, feel free to email us. We'd be happy to discuss that. Little bonus perk, InfoReady allows template sharing. So if you know someone already using InfoReady, they can share their template with you and we can help facilitate that. And then on the next slide, you've got our beautiful faces on there. I definitely want a new headshot taken of me. But that's for another day. So I'd like to introduce Jim Klenner. He's the Associate Director and Biosafety Officer in the Office of Research Integrity at Ball State University. So in that role, Jim has been using InfoReady for approximately a year and was recently made the super administrator. So he knows the system very well at this point. He is the owner of 3 separate processes in the system. We're going to get a deep dive into some of those processes today. So take notes because Jim's going to be sharing lots of good information today on how they're managing some of those research integrity processes. And then I think we're ready for the guest of the hour, Jim Klenner, to take over.
All right, thank you, Carlos. Move that out of the way. So yeah, if we could go ahead and start with the first slide. All right, one of the things I found with InfoReady is there really aren't too many questions or ideas you can come up with that can't be adapted. When I first started with this, it was to help out someone develop an export control form. And that was done, but that was with an older template. But keep that thought in mind because I have something to show you later on in this presentation. Then it came up with the idea, well, what about a conflict of interest, conflict of commitment form. Can we do that in InfoReady? So about a year or so ago, when I was first getting my feet real wet in InfoReady, I started to develop this. The more questions I asked, the more webinars I attended on InfoReady, the more I learned. And while this may not be a complete tutorial today, it's going to demonstrate a few of the tips and the tricks that I've learned along the way that have really been useful. Now, in developing a conflict of interest form, we have multiple steps of review. The first one goes automatically to the responsible conduct for research officer. You'll notice it's automatically assigned to the review. Now we have a far-reaching date, but that doesn't mean that's an actual deadline. But what that does is it kicks in the accept notification to the applicant. And this took me a while to put my brain around, because working with research committees, when we say accept or approve, it means, okay, you're done, you can go ahead and start work. But in InfoReady, since it was, I think, based mainly on grants, grants are awarded. That's the approval step. So it took a while to realize that accept means I'm telling the applicant, we've received your submission, now we're going to review it and we'll let you know what happens. That's what happens here. We have a notification that goes out. The Office of Research Integrity has reviewed this or received this. We're going to review it. And we also, in that notification, give information on who to contact, who our RCR officer is, in case you have any questions. But again, we don't have to accept it because we have automatically assigned reviews for the first routing step, that initial quality check. Now, it is a return for revisions. So if there's something missing, if there's a box not checked, or they don't give the right amount of, say, funding, this can go back to the applicant and then come back for the next step of review. So if we can move on to the next one. Now, a couple of things we ask. Like I said, we have a multiple level of reviews for a conflict of interest form. After the initial check, it goes to the applicant's or the submitter's department chair or direct supervisor. If they happen to be the department chair, then it goes to the next higher administrative level. That's the first review. If it gets approved, then it goes to the dean or vice president, the secondary review. On the application, we ask them, give the name of your supervisor or chair and give the email. Then the same for the college dean or VP, give that person notification, or unless it's someone designated by the VP to look at these, to give their name and also their email. And the reason we do that, there's a lot of floating in universities when it comes to chairs. A chair may retire, so they have a temporary chair. Well, they can act, but if they hire a new chair, then that name changes again. The person filling out the form should know who their chair is and should know who their VP or dean is. By writing it in with an email, then we can double check to make sure we have the proper person. The real ideal part about this, whenever we put it in as a reviewer, if they've already been logged on to InfoReady, as soon as we start typing 3 or 4 letters of their last name, their email pops up. But it's just a quality check, because we really shouldn't have to go find this information, so we're asking the applicant to supply it. And it's worked out quite well. Next slide, please. Okay, this first level of approval. Noteworthy is automatically assigned reviews is not checked, because remember, we have to know who the reviewer is. We have to get that first level of notification to the chair or their supervisor, and they supply that. So this is where we would put the email in for that reviewer. Now, one thing I'm really happy about InfoReady, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's an InfoReady tutorial for reviewers. For someone who's never been on InfoReady before, never done a review, they can click on this link to go through that little short presentation. So we found that to be very useful for people. They're happy they have that information. So next slide. Now the second level, we have the dean or the vice president. Again, approve or do not approve. It just moves on. This is not coincidental with the chair. The chair has to look at it first, send either approve or do not approve, then it goes to the dean or VP. That's done manually by the RCR officer or another admin like myself. But again, we get the default reviewer from the submission form that they put in, so we know exactly who it should go to. Last thing you want to do is send a bunch of awkward emails to the wrong dean or VP. They don't like that. So we want to keep it easy on them, keep them happy. We also have the tutorial for reviewers here, but we add more information because at this level, we can have the next slide. The information that we add on this notification or these instructions here is the minimal amount that they have to file in the conflict of interest form for the state. We have an Indiana state conflict of interest disclosure. That's actually part of the description on the front page. You can easily find it there. So we make it easy for them to find it. But once they receive that, we have to get an approval letter or a support letter from the provost, or I'm sorry, from the VP that then gets forwarded to the provost. If everybody likes it and everybody accepts it, then it goes to the Board of Trustees meeting the next time they meet. More of an FYI, but it's to let all the higher ups know this person is using a book they wrote, a self-authored text in their classroom. And if they're going to make more than $250 a year doing that, then we have a Indiana financial conflict of interest disclosure. So we're all keeping it on the up and up and following all the regulations, especially with the state and federal level. But if we, next slide, please. Okay, here's the final approval. Now we have these automatically assigned reviews checked. We have the names of the people. We have the RCR officer. And in case the RCR officer is on vacation or not available at a conference, we have a secondary person who can step in and also do the final approval. Again, these are automatically submitted as soon as the dean or vice president approves or does not approve. So they get an immediate notification. This is ready to be looked at. Upon that, if everything is okay and it's ready to be approved, then they go ahead and award this. Next slide. Okay, that was the first one. And I had a lot of fun. I did a lot of learning. It was a steep learning curve to develop that. But once I really had my feet wet, I jumped right into my next project, and that's a human subjects research determination form. This is not a form that's intended to apply to do a protocol or to get protocol approval. This is to find out, do I really need to do an IRB form, Institutional Research Board? Do I have to submit to the IRB to get this project approved? So we find this very useful because 60% of our submissions are actually from students. We have a lot of sociological and psychological students who are doing non-wet lab research, so not non-laboratory research, but working with human subjects. And they do it as a condition for graduation. So it is a requirement. So this goes through annually. It's not annual comparisons of the same study. It's sort of a one and done for most of the submissions. That's why you'll see our submission deadline is January 1st, 2040, because we don't need to save these and then start a new form like is often the case with submissions like this. If you're applying for scholarships, people do that. But for this, it's just an ongoing process, and it's just to determine and to let them know you're okay, you don't need an IRB protocol, or yes, you absolutely do, and you cannot start work till it's approved. Now, if you notice at the bottom, we have an email, orihelp@bsu.edu. This is a group email, so more than one person has access to it. And again, the whole idea is if someone is overloaded with reviewing protocols or they're out of the office, someone else can reply to an email. This is one trick I came across, actually stumbled across when I was making this form. And if we can have the next slide. You can put in a message subject line for this particular email. So if someone clicks this email link and they want to send an email, the message subject, will say questions on HSR determination form. This group email probably gets 20 to 40 emails a day. Many of them are students asking, how do I complete this section? Or what do I need for an informed consent? Or just a lot of random questions that aren't related to this form. This is a way to triage this, and they can even, if they wanted to, make a folder within that ORI help email, and all of these go to that folder. by triaging it, you can reply to someone immediately without trying to figure out what email came from this. So it's a great way to isolate emails that you want to be directly dealt with. Next slide, please. Okay, since 60% of our HSR protocols are students, it's a real good idea if the advisor knows what's going on. So we put this into the form. If you are a student, you have to give your advisor's email below. And hopefully it's a valid email and there's no typos, but we will check that to make sure it's the proper email. And the whole idea is the advisor is then aware that this person has applied to be exempt from an IRB protocol procedure, or they will need an IRB protocol procedure, and then get them in that process so they can graduate in a timely manner. So yes, we do have this, but if you're not a student, if you're a faculty member, then go ahead and see if you need an IRB protocol by filling out this form. Next slide, please. Okay, what we've done with this form is to try and be as objective as possible. We didn't want any leading questions. We didn't want questions where you can verbally give your rationale why it shouldn't be human subjects research. A lot of these yes no questions, there's only one or two that have a logic response to them. So it's either yes or no. You click it, no, click it, yes, then you go on to the next one. But some of them are pretty enabling on how we can review these. Does this project involve human subjects? Well, okay, if you're talking to people or involving human subjects, well, you're a step closer to needing a protocol. Are you collecting information? Is this information involving an intervention or interaction? Now, when I made this form, I knew what the words meant, but I didn't have a clear HSR definition of them. So we put these in to help with faculty who may never have had an HSR protocol or an IRB protocol submitted, and especially to help the students. Some of the best researchers are well-trained students. So if we get them involved with this process early on, we think it'll be helpful for them. So let's move on, please. This is a good slide. Yes, we included these. Is this an international study? Is this an international collaboration? Why do we care about this? Well, now that I've taken on, most job descriptions have the line, other duties as assigned. Well, I'm taking on more of the export control management. So we have this in because if you send another or a set of data or a set of information that you've collected in your study to another country, to another institution, to another person, they have to be screened because that's considered exporting something. And it all depends who you're sending it to, what institution you're sending it to, even what country you're sending it to. Some of the export control regulations prohibit exporting to certain areas or certain countries. But for an international collaboration, this is one of the few questions that if you click yes, so let's click that, this pops up. Please list all the countries and collaborations involved with this project. So we want to know where it's going, who's going to look at it, what they're going to do with it. Are they going to use it for their own research, or are they an actual collaborator with your project? And we think these are very important to know, so that's why this popped up. Okay, next slide, please. I had a hand in developing this table. This is a multiple checkbox page. You can check none, you could check one, you could check many. But if you read the questions, and I'm not going to read all of these to you, this will be available on your webinar on a link that'll be sent out. But some of the questions, they all don't have to be answered to go one decision. They all don't have to go unanswered to go to another decision. But just the way they're worded, and when we compare it to other information on the form, really helps us easily determine whether it is human subjects research that needs review and a proper protocol submitted, or it's exempt. So we tried to cover all our bases to make it easier. But believe it or not, we still get people asking, well, why do I have to submit a form? Well, you said you were doing this. Next, please. Okay, here's where we get into some meat and potatoes with questions. The few times we're asking for actual verbiage. Describe the purpose of the project. What are you doing? What are you doing with the people? What do you hope to get out of it? And describe any interaction or intervention of human subjects. And that could involve intervening in daily activities. What happens if we close a certain road? How does that affect you with your travel? Or how does that affect you getting onto campus? If that's its type of study. But the really big one is down on the bottom. Describe any identifiable private information about human subjects that you will obtain for research purposes. This is the big one. We tried to make it as bland as possible, but this is the information we're really looking for. Oh, I'm just looking at student grades going by their account number. Big red flag. That is identifiable, and we have to really be careful. So we want to know, are you taking names? Are you taking addresses? Are you taking majors? Some majors on campus they don't have 150 freshmen, they might have 20, and it might be easy to figure out who's filling this in. So this is the one we really want to look out for. Next one. Okay, then after this, if you're using a survey, if you're doing interviews, we're asking for a copy, a Word document or a PDF document of that survey, that interview, that focus group, anything like that, and just drop it here. We don't want you to type it all in, just drop in the file that you have so it could be reviewed. Okay, we could go to the next one. Now, these are all little things that we came up with for that, but this is the one I'm working on right now. I am developing a laboratory animal research application. We're trying to get away from paper copies. If I had my way, we'd no longer have paper copies anywhere. But anyways, what we have right now, if you're not familiar with animal research, most animal protocols are only good for 3 years. And you have an annual progress report form that must be completed after year 1, after year 2, and then on year 3, you have to complete a new form. Now, what do we do with this? Well, it's a fillable PDF. So someone downloads this, they fill it in, they send it to me, and I submit it out to the committee and say, there were no adverse events. Can we just approve this? I have administrative approval rights if nothing has really changed. But again, you're dealing with attachments, you're dealing with emails. Wouldn't it be nice if we did something online, which is what we're going to go to next? So go ahead and next slide, please. I have started this and I've made progress reports for the new IACUC Laboratory Animal Research application. Annual report year 1, year 2, and then the triennial de novo review. This is when you need a new submission, and you cannot copy and paste your previous submissions. That's one thing we've had trouble with on campus. Someone would take a protocol approved 3 years ago, copy and paste it. Some have even used an older form and just changed the submission date and then sent that in. No, we want brand new because we want to know what has happened in the last 3 years. What have you changed? What may not be on a amendment form or anything? And especially the personnel that will be in your lab is undoubtedly going to be different if you're handling students than it was 3 years ago. So this is a way to start that. Now, Carlos, if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I want to move on to show you some of the things live that I'm doing. And share. Okay, that's it. Now, this is the start of the Ball State University IACUC Laboratory Animal Research application, which I've been assigned to generate. They want this to go live by next summer. So I'm really hoping to have this out for beta testing to the committee in January or February. So we're going to get all the little kinks out and all the knots and the logic out before we send it out. What my main goal is right now, our IACUC, that's an Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee. We have a submission form for wildlife studies. We have a submission form for breeder application. We have a submission form for regular wet lab, laboratory research. We have a submission form for observation. The way I envision this, we will have yes, no answers. Are you studying wildlife? No. Okay, fine. You never see all of the wildlife application questions. Are you doing research in laboratory? Yes. Okay, that's when you see the rest of that form. So I really envision not having 4 different forms anymore, but one. And depending on how you answer certain questions will determine on what you see for the rest of the form. Okay, now to show you some of this, and again, I'm wide range date, but I'm just starting now. We're going to edit this. And in the details, I give information on who to contact. Notice with animal research, I don't give my name. I just give the phone number if you want to call or go directly to our website. So that's a little different from human subjects research where you typically put the name of the person. But some of the novelties I've come up with, I'm going to go to requirements. Okay, I like this expansion here. Let me move this over. The opening, I did a paragraph in the paragraph here, and I gave the introduction to this protocol submission form. What we're doing when you use projects using animals, why it's necessary to complete this, how it gets reviewed, and just a little introductory message that they see at the top of the form. Let's see here. I'm going to go to preview to show you what that looks like. So this is what they see. One thing I would advise is putting on a nice table of contents. Activate that function. So when you make different pages, if you want to go to a different page, you can jump right to it. You don't have to scroll through all the next buttons to get to it. It's great for reviewers and it's great for submitters who need to change a few things. So we have this, again, the first name and last name, that's automatic. That comes off the, that's mandatory. We can't take this away. You can change a name, but it comes off the registration of the form itself. We're working on a couple other things, but one thing I want to show you was this. This is the, I'm sorry, go back to Designer real fast. This is the single matrix, single choice matrix. And it's very useful. Let me move this up a little. It's very useful when you have multiple questions that you're asking at the beginning of a form. And instead of having, oh, what do I have here? 6 or 5 yes, no questions. We can truncate this into one quick view. We'll go back to preview. I'm explaining and showing. We can have this one quick view where you can either yes or no to these 5 questions. So we don't have 5 different yes, no things. We thought it would be a little more user-friendly to just have these. Everybody will answer these who are submitting a form. Again, using a number, you can, how many years have you done research? But this is a big one, and this went through some regulatory people that other online services that have research protocols have an acknowledgement or a place to sign it, a digital signature. We really don't have that here, but we can have an acknowledgement button that is required. You can't go further unless this gets checked. And what it does is say you will do things according to the Animal Welfare Act, according to BSU regulations, and you will only do procedures that are approved in your current ICOOK form. So that little acknowledgement. Now, key personnel. Okay, you want to list all the people in a project, including yourself, who have a role in the research project. So the PI has to be put in here. Have a drop-down menu in all the different roles. If someone wants to put in, they're not listed here, click on other, then you get a little block here to put in what your role is. So let's go back here. And it's just a co-PI or PI. They fill this in. Now, okay, we go to the next question. What about all the other people? With paper forms, typically you might have 6, 8, maybe 10 spaces to list personnel. If you only have one student, you're wasting a lot of space on the form because you have all those empty spaces. What if you have 12 people? Well, great. Now I have to have an addendum or figure out how to modify the fillable PDF where I can add 2 more people. On a, let me go back to Designer real fast. This is one trick that I found so great to use, a repeatable section. Let me go back to review and key personnel. I put this into a repeatable section. So if you have another person, okay, we're going to add new. And the same questions pop up. But you notice you don't have any more. Okay, we're going to add 3 students. Add new, and you can put all those in and keep the form only as needed. So you're not looking at a lot of extra space and wondering how you add 3 students when you only have 2 spaces. The repeatable section, I've used it in a number of times here on this form, and it has been a wonder. It has really helped to make this user friendly. So I'm actually excited about getting it started next year. And we have a question about animal caregivers. It sounds counterintuitive to ask, are you going to allow the Ball State University animal caregivers to participate in the care and husbandry of the animals used? 9 out of 10 people will say yes, but there are some projects that use hazardous materials you don't want the animal caregivers handling. We have one researcher using a chemotherapeutic agent. When that animal was injected with a chemotherapeutic agent as a cancer study, they secrete agents in their feces and urine that can be hazardous. So only the people involved with this project can do cage changes. And the PI is responsible for training those techniques to the students. So we help protect the staff who may be unaware that this animal has been treated if the cage isn't tagged properly. Now, sometime I'll show you an animal research training. First thing is this your first BSU ICOOK submission. If you hit no, nothing comes up. If you hit yes, nothing comes up. But we want to know, have you been properly trained, or do you have a history of training that you're able to do this? And what about training completion? Have all your key personnel completed? No? Okay, tell us who the people are. If it's yes, then you can go to completed training. Now, City is very common, and we have that explained up here, going to City and where to go to get more information to do online training. If you have multiple modules, you have a certificate of completion for each module. The thing about adding or downloading a document, you're only allowed one. By doing the repeat section and creating this, you can add new. So select a file. Oh, wait, I have 2 other certificates I want to add. You can just add these certificates. The only other option is for the PI to gather all the certificates of all of their staff, all of their students, and put them in as one large PDF. We even say that here. Oh, sorry. Wrong. Don't want to download a file. Those are additional, sorry. Select a file. So you can combine all the PDFs of all these certificates and add to one file, or you can just add new. Now, I want to show you what I learned here. So I want to go back to Designer. If I'm bouncing around too much, I apologize. Sometimes you have to show how things work and then show why they work. All right, go back to the animal training. Okay, with this under, oops. Okay, sorry, down here in training. Okay, under the repeatable section, look under settings. You can put in 100, or you can put in more than that. Honestly, if you have more than 100 certificates, I'll happily put those in and combine them for you, but I don't think that would ever be the case. But you don't need may need an initial section count, just putting it up, showing I do that elsewhere, but you can say how many you're allowed to put in and all of that. But you can even make it far higher than you would ever need. Okay, going back to preview. Sorry, we're a little slow here. I'm trying to speed this up a little. That's City training. Other training not part of City training. This is where you would add that documented training of the chemotherapeutic agent. We would require it. No student is allowed to handle anything, or even staff member, until they've been trained by the PI of record. They have to know how to handle that hazardous waste, how to bag it, how to clean it, how to protect themselves, what PPE they need to use. Then the principal investigator has to watch them and sign off that, yes, they are properly trained. That's where they would put this. There's also something else they can add if there's another in-house training that someone else has done. But I have other information about that too. Okay, moving on. For funding, Ball State internal funding, federally funded. I need to add more here because if we're federally funded, then we're going to go back to the conflict of interest and the Indiana financial conflict of interest, especially if part of your salary comes from that funding. And jumping ahead to the research proposal, study title. Yep, put it in. And this is one of those mandatory ones that it gets listed, or you can't really change this. You could change the name, but it has to be there, but you could put it elsewhere in a form. A new protocol, sure, continue on. But if it's a 3-year renewal, I have to add some directions here on what to do with that 3-year renewal, that you can't just resubmit your old form. They can't in InfoReady, they have to complete a new one. But I do have plenty of instructions. I have what the study is, and this, I forget it, 1,000 words or 2,000 words, I forget, but you can limit how much you want. We try to tell people, don't copy and paste from your grant proposal and just put it into the form, write your own purpose of the study. Lots of other questions here, but one thing I want to show you is a number of animal species. Well, where do we put that? Okay, what if we have 1? Okay, here's where you give the animal species, the number of animals used, sex, vendor, source of the animals, and how old they're going to be throughout the study in years, weeks, days. But if I have 2 species, we'll just click up and add 2, and you'll get a second one. Reason I do this, again, I want to keep this form as less busy as possible and have you only see what you need. And this was a little trick I learned from a webinar about doing a number function and then having it jump to the rest of the form that you need to fill out. For breeding colony, is this a new colony? Well, then we want to know what the species, strain, and breed of animals that are included in the colony. And the number of breeding schema. Well, what if we only have 1? Same thing. You'll get these questions, but what if we have 2 different species or 2 different strains, different breeding schemas? You can click that. And this can be almost any number you want to, but again, you're only seeing what you have to see to complete the form. You're not bouncing all or looking after page of forms that you don't need to look at. A little side note, I just reapplied for our USDA Class C exhibitor license. We have some animals that are not part of research, but they're observation, and we have to get a new license from the USDA every 3 years. And out of the, I'd say 12 pages, I only needed to complete 3. And through my exasperation really was the rationale for pushing for something like this. So I try to make it as easy as possible on the researchers. And this is just the ending. I still have to put information here, but a couple other things I want to show you on our routing steps. And it took me a while to think, how did I want to do this? And again, I want to make this, I thought I'd make it bigger. Anyways, the initial admin review. This is where I will look at it and I will see if they have all the information they need. If I will check the training records of all the people listed, making sure they're ready to go, make sure they have been properly trained. I will see if everyone has gone through a medical surveillance form for occupational health, if they've gone through occupational health training. And I will also look to see if there's any glaring absences, if a section was not completed. This is where I would send it back for revisions, or I would say you need a little more detail. You just can't say I'm going to grow mice or breed mice. We need a little more information than that. This would go to me and the chair of the IACUC. We look at it. If it's good, then we go to a committee review. Now, a committee review, again, it's not automatically assigned, but I would put all the committee members here as reviewers so everyone has a chance to look at it. It's approval or not, and if there are questions, and there's invariably always questions, they can type them in here. I would gather those up and I would put them together in an email or a message to the applicant and let them open it up for revisions again. So send it back to them. allow reviewers to modify the deadline, which I would do. This is just an open deadline. I had to put something in to save the form. And since it's myself, I'll just pick a day after I receive it. But this allows me to send it back to the applicant to make the revisions, and it's all the revision requests gathered from all of the committee members. Now, in committee review, I will assign a review date. Actually, whenever I send it out, I'll tell them what I need this within a week. So if it comes back as if there were only minor revisions, someone didn't spell the name of the species properly, or someone's math was off with the size of the colony. OLAW, the Office of Laboratory Animal Welfare, does allow for designated member review, so it doesn't have to go back to the full committee. So minor revisions that would not affect the health of the animal for approval can go to a designated member review, where one or two, actually 2 or 3 people are picked by the chair to look at it. And when it goes to them, those are the emails I would put in here. So that's why it's not automatically assigned. It's different with everyone. If all 3 agree, then it could be approved. If one person doesn't agree, then it has to go back to the full committee, which just assign the rest of the committee to review it again. So it's either committee or designated member review, depending on each protocol, as is. When it comes back, when it's returned back for the revisions, I will take a look at it, not to review it, but to see if they answered all of the questions, to see if they addressed all the comments. And once that is done, then we will go to the approval stage, which they will get a notification you've been approved. You have, you're approved for the next 3 years. You have an annual report due in a year. You have your second annual report due 2 years. And that's typically from the date of approval. So if they get approved today, September 19th, 2024, your first annual report is due September 19th, 2025, and then 2026 for the second one. Your new protocol, the triennial de novo review, is then due for submission 2027 on September 19th. Now, I'm going to go back up here and show you one more other little thing under the progress reports. And I can always add another routing step, and move it wherever I want it to go. If I don't check automatically sent to the reviewers, that allows you to either skip that step and move to the next one if it's unnecessary, or alter that and limit to who can see it. Oh, I'm sorry. I want to go to progress reports, not notifications. Now, I showed you that paper copy. Here's where I made the annual report for year 1, year 2, and triennial review. For the annual report, and this will be assigned for the 1 year after the acceptance or approval date. Let me open this up a little more, sorry. Move this. It has all this. It has a web page link that they can go to if they have questions. But again, is your project still going? Have you completed it? Now you're only under data analysis, so you're not holding animals. Is it inactive? Was the project never started, but what is your anticipated start date? Well, let's see what that does. You can even put logic on a checkbox where if it's currently inactive, well, that's all right. If it's active, no problem. If it's inactive and never started, you're prompted to put what the anticipated start date is. And that only pops up if this is your situation. With animal update, the species, total number that were approved in a protocol, the number of animals used last year, and that means that should be remaining animals. What if you have 2 different species? Well, we can add another one. This is that repeatable section that is, I think, is one of the most invaluable things in making a research protocol form in InfoReady. So you can keep adding more as needed. You're responsible for, as a PI, for making people aware of any medical developments. Some people might start sneezing. They get watery eyes because they're suddenly becoming allergic to mice. They may not be aware of it because it encroaches slowly but steadily over time. If that happens, we want them to fill out a medical questionnaire for animal handlers. Now, you're kind of on the gray borderline of HIPAA. You can't as a PI, you can't ask one of your staff, do you feel like you're allergic to animals? But you can tell them, if you notice new symptoms working around animals, go ahead and complete this and we'll do it properly. But the best way to do it, make an announcement at a lab meeting or send out this link to all of the people working in your laboratory. And of course, if there's any been developments or any adverse events, you can, this is a rich text environment, so you can put all of that here. Information from questions 2, 3, and 4 can be added here. And again, affirmation, I certify the information in this annual report is complete, up to date, and accurate. You're submitting it as the PI of record. And by checking this and submitting it, you're saying this statement that the annual report is complete, up to date, and accurate. Because the PI of record is responsible, I never check this, allow awardees to assign a report to someone else. I don't want anyone else to do this. I want the PI of record to do this. Now, do I have to redo all of this to make the second annual report? Let me collapse this down here. I need the same thing for annual report year 2. Do I have to write everything? No, this is a trick I learned about a month ago, attending one of these webinars. You can create a report and you can copy annual report year 1. And it'll come up here and you can move it up and then rename it as annual report year 2. If it's going to be identical, this is how it works. Now, with these annual reports, project reports, you can assign a date that it has to be done. My plan is to assign a reminder 3 months ahead, 1 month ahead, and 1 week ahead. Now, what if they complete it 2 months and 25 days ahead? They've had that first 3-month reminder. Are they going to get an email again in 2 months and an email again 1 week before? No. The brilliance of InfoReady is if you complete that progress report and submit it, you don't get the next 2 reminders. But I want to give them enough time to start thinking about it. And then by the time that third one comes, look, you have 1 week left to do this, so please get this in. If there's no adverse events, it should take you 10 minutes. But this create a report and create a copy of one report and just make a copy of it into another one was brilliant. This saves so much time, and it added a lot of conformity to it because the same questions are being asked for both reports. Now, I do want to show you one more thing. And I'm not going to talk too much about this, but this is working well. But the medical questionnaire for animal handlers. And I'm going to edit this just to show you what it looks like and the requirements. Come on. Okay, we're going to go to next. And again, when it goes to the, it's also automatic routing step. So when it goes to me and I send it to our designated medical provider, the best thing about this, medical questionnaires are usually on paper, and then they're handled by someone, then they're given to someone else. Well, now you're handing off HIPAA protected information. This is all secure, and the only person that sees it, I mean, I'm the administrator, so I can see it, but I'm really don't pay attention to it. I'll look to see if something is missing, but I don't really read it. It goes to the designated medical provider at our Ball State University Health Center. She will look at it. Dr. Dorman is wonderful. She usually gets this done in a day or two, and will tell me whether or not she has to see the person or that person is good to go. Now, if someone develops a new symptom, if they're getting itchy eyes or they're sneezing a lot while they're around animals, this isn't a one-time submission. They can go ahead and resubmit and talk about those symptoms, go be evaluated by the designated medical provider, and then remediation steps will be taken, whether they need a certain PPE or a certain workload that takes them away from whatever is causing their symptomatology. So we don't have progress reports. We're just doing annual submissions if need be. If no symptoms, then this is a one-time. And let's see here. One other thing I want to show you is a conflict of interest form that I made up. I'm going to talk a little bit. No, this will be the last I talk about it. But when we were doing paper copies, download the PDF, the person fills it in, sends it to us. Then it gets sent to the chair. Then it gets sent to the VP. Then it gets sent back to us. Attachments and copies, they're not always looked at. And we were averaging 1 or 2 a month. Since February, we've received 182. This has been dramatic. If you take away the paper copy and do something that someone could do at their desktop and just put in the information and submit it, then we don't have to do email attachments. We don't have to worry about an email not getting there because your internet went out while you were at home and trying to send it, or the PDF file gets messed up somehow. This has been so widely received and widely accepted. It's really impressive when it comes to InfoReady from me, in my point. Now I'm going to stop sharing and we'll go back to Carlos and the slides. Okay, rounding up here a little bit. Sorry, I'm going a little long, but when you get excited about something, you just want to keep talking about it. Like I said, I was being moved to export control management, and they had a form called the material shipment disclosure form. And I went to edit it, like, wait a minute, this is what I see. I can't edit any of this, and this looks like nothing like the form developer. So what do I do? Well, again, from a webinar, I actually listened to the webinar again whenever the link came out because I wasn't certain I heard it right. And when you're watching the live, you really can't pause it because you might miss something. But yes, if we can have the next slide. This is great. This was an existing template that I couldn't edit, but if you go in the lower right, you can see copy on the right side. This new pop-up window is kind of blocking it, but you can copy. Oh, sorry. Yeah, you stay here. You can make a copy and put it in Form Designer. You can do the existing template as is or convert it to Form Designer. And that's exactly what I did here. So if we could go to the next slide. Boom. So this material shipment form, I renamed it as material shipment export control form. The original form is still active and it will be until I complete this. But now I can make my own form and I can do all the little tricks and tips that I've learned about and put it into here. And I'm going to actually have several long yes, no answer trees that when it comes to export control, are you shipping here, shipping there, or shipping to a country that needs evaluated or is red flagged? Hit yes or no, and it'll tell you what to do next. So it'll almost be instructional while you're filling out the form. I'm kind of excited about this. I'd really love to have this done by, I don't know, maybe the end of November. But we'll see what happens with that. So I think it'll be better than the last form. And oh, one thing about this form, the support you get from InfoReady is unbelievable. I'm not just trying to blare too big of a trumpet, but I was wondering if we have the original shipment form and it has that URL, the link to go to it on InfoReady, can I make a new form and then overwrite that original form and use the same URL? They told me no once that URL is assigned. So I went ahead and did a search for that form, and there's only 3 sites on the entire Ball State University website that has that link. So it'll be pretty easy to change the URL once I'm finished with here. But my point is, I emailed InfoReady and asked them that question at 8:49 in the morning. They received it, they read it, they composed an answer, and I received an answer by 8:57. So in a span of what, barely 10 minutes, they answered me with a precise question. They didn't tell me, well, I don't know that, see, try this person. No, the support you get from InfoReady is astounding. So there, Clovis, I just want to say that. So we'll go to the next slide. The part of the new form, it will involve the shipment of biological materials. So I have information here. I have universal biological material transfer agreement implementing letter that they can use to ship. If it's going to be shipped internationally, then we have to worry about export and import permits. But next slide. Okay, so some of the future plans is material shipping and export control. I hope to have active by the end of the year. I want to finish my IACOOK form for beta testing in January. So that's something else I want to have done by the end of the year. Now, if anyone is listening to this and you happen to work at OLAW, the Office of Laboratory Animal Welfare office, could you contact me right after this? Because if not, I will contact OLAW myself. But OLAW has a requirement for people who use or institutions that use research animals. You have to inspect these facilities every 6 months, semi-annual inspections, and they have to be done. And any issues reported to the institutional official. They have paper copies, of course. So all inspection checklists start off as paper copies. I have an idea where I can use InfoReady and have remediation or even write-in spaces for all no answers. So if something is not being done, I can hit no, write that in, and then print that out. And my question at OLAW is, can this be sent to the institutional official as a reviewer who logs in? So we have the time and date stamp of who logged in and who approved it and approved of the remediation steps. If they have to have a signed copy, then maybe I'll print it out and take it that way. But I want to work on doing OLAW semi-annual inspections with InfoReady. And I guess the last thing, if we go to the next slide, summary, I have found out that there's more in InfoReady than is obvious. There's so many other things that you can use for the adaptability. Many of the tips I've shown you here, I've learned by attending the webinars. So the best webinars, in my opinion, are the What's New webinars. If you see those advertised, try to make time to see them because it's showing you what the new update is able to do. And that's where I learned that trick about copying a template and then transferring it to the form designer. You're probably aware of the support.InfoReadyCorp.com email, but I found it to be a very responsive and reliable resource of your questions. That's the end of the summary. So the last slide, I just have one more little thing to say that Carlos at the beginning mentioned if there's a template out there that you can borrow. I've been so grateful to the help I've received from InfoReady that I'm willing to share any of the templates that I've formed. Now, we may take away some identifiable information, but it could be easily adapted. So feel free to ask Carlos or email me directly, and then we can work with Carlos about sharing a FDT form for you. So that's all I have. I guess we'll open it up for questions. Carlos, I think I went a little late. I have a bad habit of talking too much.
Oh no, Jim, that was wonderful. It was so informative, and you gave lots of great tips. Really do appreciate that. So a quick programming note. I know we're a couple minutes from the top of the hour. We're going to go over time a little bit so that we can answer some questions that have come in. We're recording this session, so if you have to leave, don't worry. The recording will be sent to you the next day or so. So you just be able to fast forward to the end if you want. So Jim, are you ready to answer some questions?
As best I can.
All right, I'm going back on camera. All right, so first question. With the form designer in your process, is there a way to grant access to a co-PI so two people can work on the form at once?
I believe there is.
Do you ever have that situation where you need a co-PI or co-applicant to fill out the form?
Not yet, but if you look at the progress report, it will allow someone else to do that. I don't know about the actual submission. That's a good question. But with the progress report, you can assign someone else to do it.
Yeah. It's a great point. You addressed that. With the initial form, you can actually, a user can go into their user profile and assign someone to be a proxy. So they can go in and fill out the form in collaboration with whoever the primary person is.
That's a good point. One thing I like to say about that, any administrator in your unit can also be a proxy, but I hesitate to do that. I don't think it's my place to make a revision to a form, because if I do it inaccurately and something happens, it's on me, not the PI. So I try not to do that.
Yeah, I don't blame you. If you can establish a process where they can make the edits on their own, that definitely makes it cleaner, doesn't it?
Mhm. Absolutely.
Um, okay, another question we got in here. How is the reporting done? So you're collecting all this information. How are you doing reporting? Are you sharing the data with other folks at Ball State?
The reporting hasn't become an issue yet because we're looking at individual submissions and they're not really collaborative or joined with other submissions, if that makes sense. So these are all looked at individually. We can collect data. We can export all the actions taken on a certain form itself and then present that to an IO if need be. But we're not really collecting data that we would look at. I do like that screenshot for the opening page administrator sees how many has been submitted, how many's been still in review, and how many needs to be accepted, and all of that. But that's about the only data we're collecting right now.
Right. And I'll add one thing. There's a feature in the system called Viewer per competition or opportunity or workflow. Uh, if you needed to give someone access to look at that data grid or download the report, a spreadsheet, you could give them viewer access temporarily. They could go in, do their thing,
Okay.
and
And the best part of that, they can't edit it.
right, and they don't have any admin permissions to manage the process, but
Mhm.
they can go in and pull data out if need be. So another question we got in here related to the IRB process. So you're managing something that's pre-IRB with the Human Subjects Research Determination form.
Mhm.
How what system are you using to manage IRB? How are you directing folks to down that pathway?
That information is on our website. That if you're uncertain if you need an IRB research protocol, fill out this form and we'll get back to you right away. It's usually less than a week if they're even if they're really busy. But other than that, I don't know how else to answer that. Yeah, we tried to do it with that. We used to be a paper process too, which was a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. So people would call and say, "Well, how do I download a PDF?"
Hmm.
Okay, you can get on the internet, so just fill out this form. Uh, but that's really what it was, to help people realize that they may be exempt or they absolutely are mandated to complete an IRB protocol.
And those IRB protocols where are those completed?
Oh, right now, another vendor, I don't know if I'm allowed to say,
Oh,
uh,
it's fine. We're all
but
friends
we
here.
it's currently IRB net, but we're making a transition by the end of the year for our IRB to Cayuse because our sponsored programs and all the grant funding is through Cayuse, and now this will be interlinked a lot smoother.
Oh,
So
I didn't realize
yeah,
that.
yeah,
We actually have a partnership with Cayuse as well. So
okay. Oh,
that's
is that right? So
yeah.
can you interact?
We're working on building some stuff out.
You will have a captive audience here at Ball State if you do. Would
Okay.
love to hear about that.
Oh, okay. So
Oh my gosh.
I will tell Sarah August, your account manager, to talk to you at some point in the
Okay.
next month.
Yeah. You would make our vice provost for research very, very happy.
We aim to please.
Hmm. Well, that's why I'm taking IACOOK to InfoReady. We don't have enough protocols to warrant the huge expense it would be to go into Cayuse with an IACOOK program.
No, that makes sense. So if the volume's not there,
Right. I mean, we're looking at thousands of IRB protocols every year. So the volume is there for them.
Yeah. What's your volume on IACook?
Dozens.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So
You don't need to pay thousands of dollars for dozens.
no, $1,000 a protocol. No, thank you.
Um, just a couple more questions that we have. Won't get into all of them because we're a few minutes over here. And so with the progress report, so you're collecting annual reports.
Mhm.
What was how long would it take you for someone to actually submit a report before? Right? Were there terrible delays in people meeting deadlines?
Yeah, and that's the other thing. They would get very few reminders. And as the administrator, I would get few reminders that this one is due. So I would constantly have to go in and look at a spreadsheet and say when it was last approved and, oh, they haven't submitted a CR. We need to get them to do that. But they download the form, they fill in the PDF, digitally sign it, and then send it to me. And then I send it to others to look at. Too much paper, too many emails, too much electronic traffic. Use an InfoReady, someone gets alerted that it's there for them to look at and they could go right into it. But
Oh,
yeah, we have had delays, especially if someone's on sabbatical or on vacation or whatever. Oh,
this definitely increases visibility and speeds up the completion process.
mhm.
That's great. Progress reports are really helpful. And we're always looking at adding more features to progress reports to make that process even better. Closing the loop's a big deal, isn't it?
Yeah.
We got another question here, and I think this will be the last one before we close it out. Would it be feasible to use InfoReady to build IRB applications, especially from a record keeping standpoint? So this is a question, your opinion on that.
I honestly don't see why not, because I'm doing it with the iCook. I will have all the records. And the best thing about InfoReady, we have a paper form now that, like I said, for the iCook, after 3 years, people change the date and they don't change anything. And you can't tell me your research has not changed your methodology in 3 years. InfoReady requires you to put in a new form, and it won't be the same number. So we'll have that historical backing where we can go back and look at an old form and make sure they're not doing anything drastically different that they're not approved to do. So plus, I may download all the data and just keep it anyhow. I don't think InfoReady has any chance of just imploding and losing all the data. So, but no, it's a great way to do it. And no more paper copies. Thank you.
Yeah,
Drives me
right.
crazy.
Some places have huge file rooms
Yes.
full of paper that's decades old.
And imagine, well, for the IRB, imagine, I don't know, a 30, 40, 50 page application. It includes the informed consent and everything. It's this big. And then you have 14 studies to look at. And you're carrying this half a tree with you to look at during the meeting.
Need a shopping cart.
Yeah,
Around.
some kind of cart, backpack.
Okay. Oh, we just got another one. Someone wanted clarifying question on proxy access. So the question is, and I'll answer this one, Jim.
Okay.
Does proxy give access to everything? One person says, I'm thinking about two people working on one project together, but not always being collaborators or wanting someone else to have access to everything. So two-part answer for you. The proxy access on submitting the initial form technically would give them access to submit other forms on their behalf. So it would require some communication there up front. Thankfully, there's space to add some notes there. So that's on the initial form that's submitted. For the progress report, the PI can provide access per progress report form. So that's a little more controlled, and the permissions are more narrow there.
Now, for the viewer access, that would work well for the non-affiliated members, right? Who don't have a university email address. And
Oh, the
would
viewer
grab-
access is more of something that's a step below administrator to give
Okay.
them access to view the data grid
Okay.
where we are for everything, or download the report. That's just a spreadsheet. Well, download a spreadsheet of everything that's been
Okay.
Okay. Thank you everyone for the additional 11 minutes here. We really appreciate that bonus time, but I think we covered a lot of additional ground with the Q&A that is helpful and informative. So with that, a big final thank you to Jim Klenner. Amazing presentation. Thanks for sharing all of your insights, expertise, and lessons learned. Jim mentioned that he's willing to share a cleanup template. So feel free to email Jim or InfoReady. We can help facilitate that. And then to everyone on the call, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate you joining us for the Peer Spotlight webinar today. The recording of the webinar will be sent in the next day or two. You feel free to share it with your colleagues. Lastly, have a great day and great weekend. Saturday can't get here soon enough. Bye, everyone. Thank you.